Welcome to Season 2 of The Good Pod. Today's podcast is presented by Dr. Barry Napier.
It is possible that a lot of people will not really understand why I'm saying what I'm saying now. Because what I'm saying is, or asking, is Billy Graham, is he a man of God, or was he? Now, though about one man, in this case Billy Graham, this is an important topic concerning every preacher who teaches others. And I am still concerned by what happened in the 1990s with the Toronto Blessing and people being called men of God and even apostles. And so it is a very important thing to talk about. Now, if I mention BTM in this, it's referring to the Bible Theology Ministries, of which I am a founder. Now, if a man teaches or does things that oppose God in a major way, can he still be called a man of God? That is, can he still claim to be doing God's work according to his will? I ask this in sincerity, with no animosity at all towards anyone who does not fit God's bill, and I certainly have no animosity towards Billy Graham. But the truth must be said. Billy Graham is very much an icon within the Christian church. To many he is still an idol after his death. He is praised for multi-thousand attendances at his rallies. People point to the huge number of responses to the so-called altar call. Why then should we question the veracity and integrity of the man? The answer is a very simple one. Billy Graham fell a long way from true evangelism and from the truth itself, and the responses of his followers can be taken with a huge pinch of salt. In 1987, the BTM, Bible Theology Ministries, published articles on Billy Graham. They were based on authentic reports from many sources, and that included his friends. The conclusions that Graham was not acting in a biblical manner were obvious. Yet, BTM lost about half its readership simply for telling that truth. People sent very abusive letters to the editor, and to these folk the articles were blasphemy. It's very odd when you think that people are saying it's blasphemous to speak against an ordinary man. So, let us underline something here. Billy Graham is only a man, not a god. Thus, he can, and he did, fall spiritually. So can I, so can you. So it's about everybody who makes public a claim that they're speaking from God. Now, after careful research, BTM agreed that Graham appears to have known a real salvation and conversion. Now, I'm not being arrogant in saying this. Some have questioned the validity of judging others, as we've seen in another podcast. But we are commanded to judge others, especially if they are acting in opposition to God's word. Now, by collecting together various evidences from his early years, we concluded that Graham appeared to start out as a genuine preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. At that time, he held firmly to the basic tenets of the Christian faith. But gradually, with fame, it seems, came a loss of integrity. With loss of integrity came a moving away from the basic, mighty doctrinal statements of God's word. And what follows are random quotes from authentic sources. Now, John R. Rice, who knew him well, in his book Daring Both Ways at Once, he said, Dr. Graham is the front man, the chief spokesman for a growing group of people who believe in yoking up with unbelievers. They believe that a man may be saved without believing that the Bible is true, or without believing in the virgin birth or the deity of Christ. This is coexistence with infidels. Now, the title of this book refers to the habit of the Graham organization of issuing defensive statements which are completely at variance with what Graham actually teaches. So Graham says one thing, and then his organization a bit later will say that he meant something totally different. And this explains why Dr. Rice said both ways at once. That is, he or his organisation which he is responsible for is two-faced. Dr. Mervyn Stockwood said, Billy Graham calls infidels, liberals and modernists godly men. Billy Graham and the Church of Rome by Ian Paisley. He's quoting from Paisley. Reverend William Barclay said he recommends the Apocrypha, as does the Roman Catholic cult, as being equal to the Old Testament, says Jesus was not God, does not accept various miracles of Christ, etc. Bishop G. Kennedy said he clearly rejects the deity of Christ. He says that it is idolatry to claim the Bible to be the final authority. Now, perhaps a lot of you have never come across this before, but I can assure you that what I'm giving you is merely a small amount of information on this particular problem. We could go through the list and see that it is more like a dunghill of rotting flesh than a mountain of godly men. When a man's known associates openly declare their unbelief, and when he openly allies himself with them, then we have no option but to judge him to be the same. Graham insisted that all comers are included in local campaign committees, whether they're Roman Catholics, liberals or even self-professing unbelievers. It didn't matter. This is because the aim is to involve the greatest number of influential men in the area, so that the greatest number of people will visit the meetings. And when they come, they listen to a diluted gospel which has been pruned deliberately to appeal on a human level and not to upset anyone at all. Those who come forward at the altar call are then pointed toward counsellors, and they come from various unbelieving groups which include Roman Catholics, liberals and even Jews. Thus, those who are supposedly saved are pushed headlong into the arms of a cult or a false religion. Graham not only knew this, he actually planned it that way. That so many are claimed to be saved, therefore, is highly questionable, given the huge fall-away rate. Perhaps you don't know that a lot of people who go forward, claim to be saved, eventually just come away again from their churches and are never seen again. Graham was on the board of Fuller Seminary, which was led by a man who publicly attacked fundamental Christianity, that is, true faith, and who is a modernist who has acted on behalf of communism. And I still remember the time he visited Russia and the dismay felt by all of us that he pretended in public that Russia was not against Christians and did not drive the church underground. It was a very, very bad day. Graham was quoted as being a friend of the Jesuits in the USA, and that was said by the Catholics themselves in the Catholic Herald, June 3rd, 1966. Anyone who has the barest knowledge of Jesuits understands that they are the most cunning and most devious of Catholics, whose oath of allegiance, at least formally, includes a vow to murder Protestants, if they are called to do so by the Pope. Jesuits, by order of the Catholic Church, were behind the assassination of President Lincoln. Even in the 1800s, Lincoln knew of their plots. Graham was a frequent speaker at many Catholic colleges and seminaries. You've got to ask yourself why. He has himself said, I feel much closer to Roman Catholic tradition than to some of the more liberal Protestants. That's quoted in the Greenville News. This should not really have surprised them. He attends many, or used to attend many Catholic masses, but he is not only a Rome lover, he also links up with other false world faiths. I believe there is a great deal, he said, to learn from other religions in the Far East, especially from Buddhism. That's quoted from the Reformation Review when he visited Japan. He does not care if people accept the inerrancy principle and says that they may take the various biblical accounts such as creation or Adam and Eve as being literal or figurative. This is because to him, love, a notorious excuse for unbelief, is of far greater importance than doctrine and truth. He believes that a man such as Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who was very well known at one time, he was a doctor and he worked in Africa, he said that Dr. Schweitzer is in heaven, even though he was an unbeliever who denied the deity of Christ and said Christ was an epileptic. This is par for the course. This is what Graham was like all the time. Now, Graham does not teach biblical salvation, but says that there are many ways to God. Those who have been brought up in Christian homes are automatically believers to him, even if they have not experienced personal salvation. He also accepts that child baptism regenerates and saves the child. That's reported in the Lutheran Standard. Now, in one Brazilian crusade, Graham allowed, and that means he must also have invited them, the local Roman Catholic bishop to bless the crowd. We see this in the New York Times, November the 9th, 1963. He admitted that the majority of support for his crusades came from Roman Catholics. Well, of course it does. Graham gave them new converts on a plate. One Roman Catholic priest even suggested that Rome may one day canonize Graham. If you can't see the close link between Graham and the Roman Catholic Church in that, well, the Graham organisation is massive, with substantial income. It uses this to discredit anyone who raises a voice against its Lord and Master. Despite many years of counselling from his former close friends, including Dr. Rice, Graham continued in his godless ways and even increased them. He once vowed to God never to allow an unbeliever or a liberal onto his committees. But they were all prominent in every one of them. Time and again this is refuted in letters to concerned Christians sent by himself or his organisation. But Graham then proceeds to say the exact opposite to liberals and unbelievers, so as to elicit their support. So he's, as Dr. Rice says, he faces all ways at once. In Scotland, for example, Graham repeatedly said in public, "I am not a fundamentalist." But when Christians expressed their dismay, the Graham organisation sent them personal letters to say that Graham had never even said it. The so-called holy life he leads is just a front for heresy and godless teaching. Now, according to the Ecumenical Press Service, July the 14th, 1966, referring to the London Crusade, it said, Dr. Graham said that he sees a new spirit in the world which he believes can be attributed to the ecumenical movement. Now, as a young Christian, I attended that very crusade. I sat attentively in one of the top rows of seats. I didn't even realise Graham had just spoken, let alone that he'd just given a gospel message. Such was his image and practice. It just left me cold. The meeting was hyped up by extensive use of emotional music. Many counsellors were wishy-washy or biblically unsound. And I remember after that meeting I went downstairs just to have a look round, and I wanted to find out where I could stay for the night. One of them was approached by myself, that is, one of the so-called counsellors. All I wanted to ask for was an address of a nearby hotel that offered cheap rooms. But as soon as I began to speak, to my utter amazement, the man just almost broke down in tears. He sputtered an abject apology that he couldn't put me up himself in his own home. I'd never even asked that. Then followed a potted history of his poor spiritual state, the unbelief of his wife, and a lot else. I made a quick exit. From what I could see, all the other counsellors were roaming around backstage, randomly approaching the people who were there. God help them if they were actually counselled by them. A man cannot be revered for what he used to be. Remember that. If now he is something totally different, Now, Billy Graham appeared to have started out in the right way, but perhaps in the light of his last few decades, that was just what many uncalled preachers do at first. They tailor their beliefs and words so that they are correct. Thus, what he has become is not something new, but something which has always been present within him. Whatever the truth is, Graham increasingly acted in the most ungodly manner. He was ecumenical in the extreme. He spoke lovingly of cults and occultish, mystic religions, and warmly commended heretics. He lied about his beliefs and stance and got his organization to do likewise. He sent converts, if that is what they are, into the arms of wolves dressed as lambs. These features do not belong to a man of God. It is about time that his followers, even today, did the right thing and cast him from their midst.